an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 216, 217, and 218. In these episodes, so first we have a, red light, green light, and that's fine. But then we have Luffy fights with an Afro. And this is much, much less fine. It's time to have a talk. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. What's up, Florian? So, all right. I'm going to start with the good stuff. Let's start with the red light, green light, in which our friend with the stilts is the stoplight. I had forgotten that in red light, green light, a person is the one that's in charge of saying go. And essentially, the Foxy Pirates are this dude is the closest to an uninterested party that we can come up with. So him being the one to say red light, green light makes the most sense. And all that honestly feels like it's probably the best faith that they have put out there with these games. I feel like that's one of the few times that I've been, even the ref showing up with all of his friends in the other episode, we don't know that ref. He could still have been on the Foxy Pirate side. I don't think he was, but the fact that we're just going to go with this random that pretty much everybody has only just met, not to say that he doesn't feel a bit of a way about them trying to shoot and steal Shelley, his beloved horse. But I was just sort of pleasantly surprised. I figured for sure that it was going to be fucking Foxy that says red light, green light or something like that. Gus is talking about the Afro thing. I will touch on that. We'll get there, Gus. So what we have here is this series of courses. There's two courses, a separate one for each of them, that is on coral, and they have to go all the way out to the end and be the first ones to touch the stoplight, as they are calling this man, and they are allowed to use whatever means they feel like to get there. And it's kind of wild, the way that they are doing this, I thought it was going to be... I thought that this was going to be less of a regular foot race and more of a on the field kind of thing. Kind of like the dodgeball, I suppose. But our friends are standing at the end of this long, windy road that goes straight uphill. And even though they have somebody who's a little bit on their side, with this old man being the stoplight, their path is clearly a lot more difficult. They are given an unfair course, which Nami points out. And I also thought it was interesting that the course begins out in the water. So they have to go out there to start it off and then run back toward the land. And I will tell you guys, I, for some reason, missed where they were standing for a minute and thought that they were having to run out toward the water and kept getting confused. And finally was oh my God, Dodoi. Okay, I got it. So basically, eventually, their paths converge and they wind up in the same place and having to face the same obstacles. But initially, the other guys get to go straight ahead and it's no problem. So everything that you can expect happens. Zoro and Sanji head out at the same time. They argue head to head the entire run and are really not paying attention to where they're going. As usual, Nami and Usopp are paired up together and Chopper is with them, and they are not able to keep up with these two, even though, you know, these guys are not even like looking at the road. They are just 100% absorbed in yelling at each other. And as this is all happening, we're hearing the guy that like say red light, green light, but he's taking so long to say it. And this was the only part that I kind of was like, okay, I think that maybe I didn't play the game this way. I'm a little bit unfamiliar with because I guess it's supposed to be that as soon as he finishes saying red light, like he has to finish the whole word. That's when you have to stop. And I don't remember if that was a rule when I played this. Like if you could fake people out by just saying red and then not finishing. He doesn't do that in this, I'll say that. But I was just sort of thinking about the way kids think and, you know, how we'll always try and find a loophole in the rules to trick people. And I just really enjoy that at one point Luffy is just like, man, even his words are long. So Sanji and Usopp are out ahead of our friends, like pretty much outpace them completely. But they just lose their lead because they stop in place to continue to yell at each other. And we've got two of these like giant dudes, Big Pan and what's this guy? Is this the pickle guy? I can't remember his name. But the two of them decide to go directly after Sanji and Zoro because they're the obvious threat here. So the two of them chuck a giant boulder in their direction. And the way that this works out is the old guy finishes saying red light as this is airborne, this like rock, right? And he says it right, like they have already cut it in half. Zoro's cut it in half and Sanji has kicked it in their direction. So because they've already said red light, these two have to stand still in place and let themselves get hit. And they get knocked completely off the course and taken out almost immediately. And this is something that I really am enjoying about these games is like, we're going to start it off with this huge over advantage on their side. And we have to figure out how we're going to slowly get them back down to a reasonable competitive level. And it always goes slightly differently, but like with the dodgeball, they took out a bunch of dudes at the same side, or at the same time. And here, these guys just thinking, oh, they're distracted, we can sneak up on them. I mean, normally it's not like that wouldn't work. We have seen how completely unfocused Sanji and Zoro can be sometimes. But they are able to handle a little boulder. That's no problem. They've been through this game before. Gus says, basically the game is different in Japanese. You have to say a phrase. I forgot what it is, but people can only move while you're saying it, I think. I don't know exactly. Okay. Yeah, this was just like... it's so funny to like be brought back to some of these old games. And red light, green light, Simon Says, it's such a simple game, but that one was always pretty fun to me. And it just makes me think about the huge difference in games that some kids like versus others. I am not going to be a dodgeball kid. I am going to be the Simon Says kid, which feels like takes a little bit more brain power. It's not as athletic. And in my school, when we had gym class, there was a section where it was country line dancing. And that was what we were learning. We weren't playing a sport for like a couple of weeks. My favorite section. I loved the country line dancing. And it was the kinds of thing that when I would be doing this, it would suddenly become clear to me, oh, it's not that I have a problem with exercise. I just don't like any of the things that we are normally told are exercise. And growing to realize I like stuff that's a little bit more creative or that has a lot of focus on form, like ballet or yoga. I don't like just competing for points. I don't care about that, you know? And I don't like having to work as a team. I'm not a team player, kids. This is why I do the job that I do. I don't like working with a team. What can I say? It's not for everybody. So anyway, these two, like, as usual, Usopp and Nami and Chopper are all looking toward Zoro and Sanji as the only ones that are going to be able to save them. Because they have run the fastest, they got these other two guys out. It's just, like, all three of them really quickly kind of give up on themselves. And I was really gratified to see that these guys are not the savior of the team. In fact, both of them completely ruin it, and it's things that they had under their own control that they could have avoided and didn't. Whereas Usopp and Nami and Chopper, spoilers, they lose this game, but they lose through no fault of their own. They are ready to do the winning touch on the stoplight, and somebody gets chucked on top of them and lands on them and stops them. Sanji is about to win, and he sees the girl from the other team, Porsche, hanging off the side of a cliff. She's like clinging to Hamburg, I think. And he's suddenly overwhelmed with the need to help her. And he goes running off to help instead of winning. And this was entirely 100% on him. What's so frustrating about this is that he could have tapped the guy and won the game in an instant and then gone and saved her. But that is not how his dumb brain works. So he runs off, loses their entire chance while the team looks on, baffled. Meanwhile, Zoro's bad sense of direction. I don't know why this joke is still so good to me, but I swear, guys, this isn't getting old. His bad sense of direction is so weird and funny. And I just don't I was talking to Owen about this, and he said that there are a couple of tropes in anime with characters having a particular little quirk, and being hungry all the time, being a lovesick fool, and having a really bad sense of direction are three sort of like tried and true tropes. So I think that he doesn't find this as funny as I do because he has seen this before. But this is new to me. I'm not into this genre really, you know, I'm just starting to understand it and get into it at all. So for me, this is still very fresh. And the idea that he got lost, he like turned around and started at the very beginning of the course somehow. And he winds up out facing the water. Well, Sanji's watching him going, dude, like, how did you end up there? What? Where are you? That, I don't know why, but that really got to me. Long story short, all of the trio that are looking to Sanji and Zoro are the ones that actually get up to the stoplight. And this was one of those moments where I was kind of like, well, what can stop them? And it is insult to injury that it's somebody from the other team getting tossed onto them, but it's not even the other team that did it. It's Zoro that did it. And he is absolutely unrepentant. Zoro is so unconcerned with the fact that he basically like lost them the entire game. And this is the second, I think, challenge. So they started the episode by taking Robin, and once they, like, at this point lose again, they are not going to be able to take Robin back. And the fact that they lost twice in a row genuinely surprised me. I was thinking, of course, that we're going to have a win-loss again, like, you know, the way that you go on and off in order to keep the tension up. But instead, they're put in the position where they have to agree to play another round, or else they can't get both crew members back because they take Chopper once this round is won. So, because I was very curious about who they were going to take, you guys remember, and I was thinking, like, are they just going to go ahead and take Chopper back? Is this going to wind up being a fight over him? And I liked that they took Robin first because her power is so insane that Foxy is just kind of like, yeah, we need to get her the fuck off their team. This is not... There's just no way. Come on. But then they do take Chopper back. They do go for him again. All I can say is I like the fact that at least now Chopper has a friend that he knows that he can sort of sit there and commiserate with. My favorite joke in this trio of episodes, though, is everybody being kind of offended at how unflappable Robin is. She just doesn't seem to express any particular emotion at all at being taken by the other team. She puts the mask on perfectly willingly and is like, so how does it look? What do you think, guys? And everybody's sort of like, wow, she doesn't seem to care. Zoro says something about how he never trusted her. And Nami leaps to Robin's defense saying, she just has total faith that we're going to get her back. And there's a little pause, and then she says, I think. I don't know why, but that really got me too. The idea that, like, Robin is so cool at all times that actually it stops being merely cool and starts to be kind of like, do we just not banter to you at all? Like, ouch. This is how I've felt about Robin, and I kind of appreciate that it's just put out there. You know, I have said to you guys before that her joining the crew, initially I was sort of like, what are you here for? I didn't really understand her being here and what it was she wanted, because it felt like she just kind of took a ride with whoever was around. She has stuck with the crew in a way that I wasn't really expecting, and so we have seen enough so far that I think that she is committed to staying with them, but she doesn't have the passionate admiration for her crewmates that they often seem to have for each other. Obviously, there's an asterisk on that sentence because of Sanji and Zoro. But it is funny to me that they were just like, all right, so we're going to make it canon that, like, Robin just straight up rolls with whatever. And it's not that she doesn't like them. I think that if they were to really lose, she would probably be upset about it. But I just don't know how upset, you know? And at one point, she brings Chopper to, like, go get some popcorn. And Chopper is holding her hand like a little kid. And they're about to, like, sit down and watch the fight that is about to happen. It's going to be like a combat round that takes place on the ship, the Foxy ship, which of course gives them this huge home advantage. And Chopper says something about how even if we lose, at least all of us will be together again. Like, we'll still be, you know, that's better than being split up. And she says, well, yeah, but Luffy wouldn't be captain anymore. Like, it's a moment of him being like, well, wait, but that's the whole thing, is that Luffy is captain. And I just thought that was sort of funny because you guys know that I don't really, like, Luffy, I don't think is a good leader. Luffy is the ringer in every fight, and he serves that purpose. But in terms of being captain, he's just bad at it. And the fact that Chopper is like, no, we can't have anybody but Luffy as captain. I was like, all right, look, the only reason for you to be that upset is the prospect of having Foxy be your captain instead, because he is very, very annoying. But Luffy isn't super good at this either, my friend. Like, just raise your standards a little bit. I feel like we need to have Luffy get some intensive training with a really good captain so that he has somebody to model his attempts at leadership on, and at least feel like there's some progress being made there, because what is he doing? He's just the fighter. He's the guy that they bring in at the end. Gus says, technically Robin getting taken at all is still filler, right? Florian says, how does she talk to them? In Japanese, she calls them by the position they have, like navigator or swordsman. How does she talk to the men on the other team? The Foxy Pirates? I don't remember. You mean like the fact that she's giving them respect when she speaks to them is sort of what you're pointing out, Florian? I'm not at that spot yet, so I'm not positive, but I'm sort of jumping ahead here too, because like the part where she gets taken by that team starts off the next episode. Or she's already been taken. Chopper getting taken starts off the next episode. And let's see. Gus says Robin doesn't use any of the crew's names. Florian says, no, the Straw Hats. She doesn't say Nami or any names of them. To Chopper? I'm sorry, I'm not following are you trying to point out that Robin isn't using their real names in front of the crew? Like the opposing team crew, basically? I didn't notice that. I'll take your word for it. I don't know if that's significant at some point and you're pointing it out because it's meant to be like important later, but it didn't register for me. I'll say that. And once Chopper gets taken and the whole like we need another round to be able to get both of them back begins, Foxy does a very predictable thing and tries to say, our team has been put through it, and if you're a good leader, you know basically when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, when to run. And he tries to say we're not doing a third round. And they convince him to do it, but they up the stakes to an insane level. So now, instead of it being like crew versus crew, it's 500 men versus 500 Straw Hats, and they don't have 500 Straw Hats. So by agreeing to this third round, what they're saying is that in perpetuity, any children of the Straw Hats, until they have reached 500 people, will automatically become members of the Foxy pirate crew. And I could not, like, what? We now we're into like a fairy tale where people are offering their firstborn children to Rumpelstiltskin or whatever the fuck. And there is this amazing sort of like what if sequence with Sanji imagining his little girl and them trying to take her, and how like, but pretty much the only other option is to accept that one member of their crew isn't coming back to them. And honestly, I just don't think it would be that big a deal if you let Robin be taken. I feel like Robin will let them think she's been taken. They'll make port somewhere. Robin will take off and she will just go back to the fucking Straw Hats if she feels like it. She can take care of herself. That's all I'm saying. So while I completely admire and understand Luffy being like, I am not letting you take any member of my crew. This is going to be the fight to the death. I completely understand. But practically speaking, I don't think it's necessary because Robin out of everybody on the crew, is the most grown, and she is the most able to take care of herself. Zoro is a good fighter, but he would get completely lost. Sanji would probably get drowned by sirens, lured out to sea. Usopp, I feel like Usopp could take care of himself, but he needs people around him to make him do the nervy things because he can be such a coward in the moment. So the only ones that I can see otherwise being able to handle it are, I was going to say Chopper. Chopper can get big, but he just doesn't take advantage of that often. So I'm not entirely sure how he would be if he were completely on his own, having to find his way back. I feel like he should be able to handle it, but he's pretty gullible, and that wouldn't work out. I guess it's just Nami and Robin, the two women, unsurprisingly, that would likely be able to figure out a way to just undo what was done. So anyway, this fight that they agree to, it's gotta take place in this circular area around their ship, and it is a fight until one goes down and doesn't come back up again, like boxing. So let me get to the thing. First of all, it should be mentioned that the sky turns dark at the beginning of this fight. And I don't know if this is something that winds up being significant. If I missed the fact that, did they do this? They wind up projecting the posters of Luffy and Foxy onto the clouds, but did they make the clouds appear? I was not certain what that was supposed to be. It doesn't really matter, but the fact that they have all of this equipment to do these games, you guys, there is something so delightful about imagining that this ship is the size that it is purely because it has to hold everything for this traveling carnival. I'm into it. So they each have their hype moment where the fighters come out onto the deck. And Luffy and Sanji go into this dressing room to prepare before they step out, and Luffy has his big moment. And Luffy is super excited about all of the equipment that they have. They need to be wearing boxing gloves, but otherwise they can kind of pick whatever. And he's a kid in a candy store. And then Sanji sees something and is like, this is it. And he goes speechless. And then we get... Oh, did I say Sanji? I think I'm saying Sanji. Gus is saying Luffy and Usopp. Yeah, Usopp, sorry. I think I interchange the two of their names in particular a lot, and I don't know what that's about. They're not alike in any way in my head. Sarah says, of course, the day I don't double check the timing, the schedule changes. Yeah, I was surprised myself that this was the first one of the day. But welcome, Seraphim. So Luffy comes out, and I think I've mentioned to you guys that I got a tiny bit spoiled on the fact that at one point Luffy has an afro. I saw it in an illustration somewhere that was just casually sharing it, and I had no context. As soon as I registered what it was, I didn't read anymore. But Luffy comes out in this full-on afro, and he and Usopp are both talking jive, basically, airplane style jive. I'm talking about the movie Airplane. In the most overblown, goofy. And the thing that's so weird here is that Usopp is a black character. I feel like you guys have told me that. It seems very much like he's coded that way. So it makes some sense that they're going to like kind of involve him in this, because otherwise there's no real reason for him to be in there with Luffy helping him pick out his outfit or anything. But it also feels like trying to find a way to... I'm trying to think of the wording for this. Trying to make this seem like less offensive by having the black character participate in it, if that makes sense. So what we get is this jive talk and the assurances by everybody except Nami, who doesn't get it, which was a pretty funny joke. Her being like, even you, Robin? What? That Luffy's attack power is higher now that he's wearing the afro. And I try not to look into things with this show because I want to avoid spoilers. But I had to know some more background on what the hell was going on here. So I went looking a little bit, and I was really careful. I did not spoil myself. And there were some discussions, mostly on Reddit, some on Twitter, about the reference that's being made here. So there was a Japanese boxer who is very clearly black or part black, who had an afro. And a lot of people are saying that this is like a direct reference to that particular boxer. And that therefore it's not racist because it's like a reference and an homage. But the thing is, that's not how racism works. Just referencing a thing isn't suddenly bulletproof armor to this being a hugely problematic thing. It's fine that you're referencing something, but having them like speak differently and this implication that it makes him stronger, it doesn't feel like, because in universe there isn't a reason for this. Nami is just as puzzled as anybody. It seems like it's just supposed to imply that if you're black, you're stronger. And if it were, I'm trying to channel the power of this one boxer that I'm referencing into Luffy, and he takes on the power of this particular boxer, I feel like we could work that into the universe somehow and make that a direct result. But the fact that Nami seems like just genuinely thrown by how confident everybody is, it's in universe. They're admitting it doesn't really have any further meaning behind, other than the assumption that people are making. And the assumption is racist. And this is like, if you, I'm having so much trouble knowing where to even start with talking about this, because in what I looked at online, I found a page of the manga that had been translated, and the translation was very blatantly racist. But then there were a lot of people pushing back on the translation, saying that it was incorrect. And the translation said, you're channeling the power of blacks, and now you have the strength of a black. And that was the wording. And people were like, it didn't say blacks in Japanese. It said, now you have the power of the afro, and you're stronger because of the afro. And I couldn't help but feel like, look, maybe it didn't say blacks in the Japanese one, and the translation is more obviously racist, but it feels like the translation's being a lot more honest about what you're saying. It's more offensive because it's saying it instead of implying it. The implication is still there, whether or not you say black people. Just saying the power of the Afro. Again, if you're trying to reference a particular boxer, you have to do something in universe to signify that, because people aren't going to fucking know that. And granted, I'm sure there are plenty of folks who watched this and found it really funny, and plenty of black people who are, I saw a lot of like cosplays out there of black men who had afros who dressed up as this particular version of Luffy. And that's fine. I'm not trying to speak for black people here. I am just saying that the assertion, the translation is more racist than the original because they say the thing isn't correct, in my opinion. It is simply being more blatant about something that I think was already being said and was being couched in a way where they had plausible deniability, and genuinely, it's very barely plausible. And the phenomenon of white people thinking that black folks are genetically stronger and just like better at physical labor or sports is a very long-standing racist trope. It is just part of like the fundamental reason black people they would justify enslaving black people, because they were stronger and better workers. This like whole concept is part of the foundational arguments of racist slave owners. Like, it's just trying to say that putting on this costume that makes you look like a black man makes you also stronger. It's feeding direct, like, this is some Get Out shit. Have you guys seen that movie? The whole thing is basically that white people are stealing the bodies of black people because they feel that their own minds, white minds, are superior. But bodies are superior to white bodies. So they're just trying to put their white mind into a black body to achieve this ideal. And that's like half of the message of that movie is acting like you revere a race because of a certain aspect that you like assign them, that they have this inherent strength. That just because it's something that you can spin as being positive doesn't mean that it's less racist. It is just a benevolent racism. It's the same thing as like trying to say all Asian people are good at math kind of bullshit, you know? And the part that I found the funniest in these like arguments that people were having about whether or not this was problematic was so many folks who were trying to assert that because the writer of these comics is a minority, that he can't be racist, that he can't be anti-black. And Asian racism against black people is a huge thing. It is absolutely rampant. Like 100% that is a thing. And it's wild to me how ignorant you have to be to assert that just because somebody is also a minority that they can't participate in the oppression of a different minority. And really, Asian people are not a minority. Like, you know, I'm talking about like within the United States, but like worldwide, they're not. But here, they are. And it's just, that's part of the weird racism of white people is like, if you aren't white, you're automatically put in this big corral with all other non-white people. And you assume that they all get along. And like, what? No. Just because they're not white doesn't mean that they're the same as each other or respect one another or get along in any way. Like, what are you talking about? So just overall, This entire thing with this Afro, it's not over by the time I finished the third of these 3 episodes, and I am desperate for it to be done. It's so uncomfortable and cringy, and it's like the kind of thing that I could see myself laughing at and finding funny 10 years ago, but these days, nah, kids, I don't think so. And it's a real bummer to me to see how many people are still out there defending it. The voices pretending this is fine are outnumbering the ones arguing about it and saying that it's not okay by a huge margin. Anyone who dares to put forth that this is problematic gets just shouted down by a crowd of people who seem to come out of nowhere on the internet to just be like, stop being too woke, enjoy a joke, whatever. And I have to accept that once you have a fandom that grows to a certain size, people are going to suck. Fandoms are volatile things, and you just are inherently going to have people within a fandom that's large enough who completely continue the tradition of whatever oppression is in society. You start to have like a sort of microcosm of the people in power in society wind up being the people in power in the fandom and dismissing the people who represent certain minority groups within the fandom. And I understand that, but I really wish I had seen more people kind of being like, what the fuck? Because it was disheartening to me when I looked for information about it, how almost everything was celebrating it, talking about how this is one of like people's favorite bits, how there's like a couple of people who do these like more detailed illustrations, and that this version of Luffy is one of the most popular illustrations that they sell. Just that kind of thing, like realizing what a big deal this is a bummer. It's just a huge bummer. And I'm not trying, you guys know when I'm talking like this is not me coming at anybody who commissioned this episode, because I'm not holding the fandom responsible for the material. You know, like, I actually appreciate that you guys didn't like try and skip this and put it into a filler thing. You were like, nah, this is part of it. She's got to watch it. I do not judge anybody for enjoying stuff that has problematic elements. And I say that with an asterisk, because some things are so problematic that if you continue to enjoy, I genuinely don't know what to say to you. But there are some things that it's just everything as you grow, you look back and begin to realize that it has problems. And that doesn't mean that you just stop enjoying the thing necessarily. Sometimes it does. But sometimes people take a criticism of something that they love as like a personal attack against them, saying if they love it, they are inherently a problematic person. And that isn't it. What it is if you are defending this blindly without being willing at all to acknowledge the issues that there are here, now you're a problematic person. You have to be able to engage with the issues in an honest, open way, as well as continue to enjoy the thing. And if you can't engage with a criticism of it, that's just toxic. That's a bad place to be. And this is something that has come up a lot with J.K. Rowling turning out to be a massive TERF, is there had always been criticism of certain aspects of her series. But looking back, there are a lot of moments that people are starting to be like, yikes, this is actually really kind of fucked up. And going deeper and starting to look at more. And you guys know, like, Harry Potter was the biggest show I've ever done. And we went to Wizarding World twice. And it was like a huge part of not necessarily me growing up, but it was just a huge part of my life, and getting to share it with Rashawn was so much fun, and I had a blast covering it. That said, there is almost no, quote, hot take that anybody has made about problematic content in Harry Potter that I disagree with. There were things that I wasn't aware of, and you can listen to the coverage of the books when we finally meet the goblins, and Rashawn expressing some real issues with the anti-Semitism inherent in the goblin design and the whole concept that had never occurred to me. I'm a lot more sensitive to anti-Black stuff than I am to anti-Semitic stuff. It's just not something that I was conscious of. Once she pointed it out, it's undeniable. It's there. Whether Rowling intended that or not, the intention isn't really what the point is when you talk about this stuff. So that's the thing that I think is the most difficult, is that people are if he was just trying to reference this boxer he admired and make a joke, what's the big deal? And it's not about that. If he was trying to just reference a boxer, he had to in world create something similar to make it feel like it's specific rather than a generalized stereotype. And whether he meant it as a joke is absolutely irrelevant. The whole "it was a joke" is, saying it's irrelevant just doesn't feel like strong enough a word. I want to be it was a joke. Exactly. Yeah, it was a joke, which is fucked up. That's the part that is yikes, So trying to wave it away because it was simply meant to be funny, to me, it's no, you're trying to wave away the actual point, which is that this was being done to be funny. Yikes. So I just had to address this because it's also really interesting to think about the difference between what people read in the Japanese versus the translation. I didn't look at what the subtitles were saying for this. I was watching the dub. So it was from what I have read, a very different vibe because of the way that the jive dub is done that doesn't come across in the Japanese version. But also a thing that keeps being said is how cool Luffy is now. And it's mentioned more than once, his coolness. And it's just so wild how anti-Blackness works. We can see aspects of Black culture and Blackness as cool, like Afros. And yet shame natural Black hair. There have been laws passed in the past 3 years making it illegal to discriminate in hiring based on the hairstyle that someone chooses to wear, because so many Black women were being pressured to use chemicals to straighten their hair and do things that not only were super damaging, but also wildly expensive because they were considered not professional looking if their hair wasn't straightened and flat ironed. If they wore braids or if they wore it naturally as a fro, it was a problem, and they were being reprimanded for it and brought into offices and talked to about it. This is the way the hair grows out of their head. And it's being treated like a fucking issue that they have to deal with. So it's so weird to know what our attitudes are like in life towards natural Black hair. But then we'll do this and talk about how cool somebody is. And it's the fact that it's cool on a person that it's not natural for. Why is that? It's just, we have such a complex, weird relationship with blackness. And it's like, the more you start to peel back that onion, the grosser it becomes. And it's so obvious that the fact there's still folks out there trying to argue that this stuff isn't still with us and still happening is insane to me. Like, I just don't know how anybody can exist in this world and not see how obvious this stuff is. So, I mean, if we're going to be picky, and I didn't bring it up before, but I'm going to go ahead and just mention it now. Usopp's design, his lips are blackface style lips, which is not the only time that we've seen that in this series. There have been multiple other characters that have black skin tones and have that weird, like, paler mouth with the outline all the way around it. That is a blackface design. And the fact that that is, like, still how they're designing black characters, that's part of all of it, you know? So, in a way, trying to be like, well, you know, Usopp was part of this and he's a black character, so I don't see why people are being offended. I'm like, well, first of all, just because he's drawn as a black character, he's drawn like this, but also, like, who's voicing him? Do they have a black guy voicing him? Like, what do you even use? Just because that is how he's drawn doesn't make anything else just okay all of a sudden. Anyway, I know that I took up a lot of time talking about this, but I just really wanted to, like, fully address it. Because it's the kind of thing that I run into sometimes where I have to decide, how hard am I going to really go? I could just say this is a problematic thing. But I decided to go hard because of the fact that I didn't see almost any pushback to people asserting this was no big deal online. Everything I saw was telling people to lighten up. It's just a joke. There's a black character as part of it. It's fine. It was about a real guy who existed, so it's fine. And I finally was like, you know, no. If it felt like, looking into the fandom, everybody sort of agreed that this was an unfortunate moment that we all regret and we all acknowledge was fucked up and we're trying to move on from it, then I probably would have been able to just be like, you guys know, this is fucked up. And I'd touch on it a little and I wouldn't have, like, gone too in depth with it. But the fact that it doesn't seem like anybody wants to admit what's actually going on here, I feel like I kind of have to. So anyway, you know, like, Florian is in the chat. I had laughed about this 10 years ago and yikes. Yeah, like, look, I'm not trying to say that I haven't done the same thing. There is so much stuff looking back that I thought was fucking hilarious and I find truly horrifying now. Like, genuinely disturbing. Not even just cringy, but like, wow. You know, there's a scene in Crocodile Dundee that I will not get into, but I had forgotten all about it. And it came up and I had to pause it because I was flipped out. And it was just, there's a lot of that when you start to, like, go back and look at stuff and you start to grow. But honestly, if you are able to interact with media that you consumed 10 years ago, the same way that you did as a child, now that you're an adult, or the same way you did when you were younger, now that you're older and know better, and you don't feel any differently about it than you used to, that's not a good sign. If you are a good person working on growing and understanding the issues of the world and having empathy for other people, becoming uncomfortable more often is a natural side effect of that. So if that's not happening, look at that. That's not a good sign. You should be uncomfortable with a lot of things if you are processing them in a more mature and informed way. It's the same thing as, like, looking back at just shit that you did. If you don't cringe at the way that you were when you were a teenager, you haven't really grown that much. And that's not to say that you need to have self-loathing, but It's part of growing up is looking back and being like, I was a fucking idiot about a lot. And that's just like, that's good. It's uncomfortable and painful and embarrassing. So because it feels bad, a lot of people act like it's an inherently bad thing, but it's not. It's part of growing, and it should be there. So anyway, I know that this was not meant to be like the focus of these 2 episodes, but it's really the focus of the jokes. So it kind of had to be my focus too. The one thing that was pretty amusing to me was as this fight continues, because Foxy is using his slow ray over and over again. And the way it works is he goes to town on Luffy's face, just punching him. And then once 30 seconds is up, all of the punches like hit at the same time, which is a wild way for this power to work. But I guess that's fine. He really is like crushing Luffy. Everything Luffy is trying, he is able to just step right around it, and it's nothing. He has bombs that he has like floating by him in the shape of his own head. What, like, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine though, having a weapon that's designed to look like your own face that you just like chuck at people? Honestly, that's hilarious. I kind of love that. But they wind up eventually down in like the holds of the ship. And so the commentator can't see them anymore. And we have 2 different sort of like focus points when they are below decks. One is him pretending to be different people to try and escape Luffy. So Foxy first pretends to be a nurse in the like doctor's office, and Luffy genuinely doesn't think it's him. And I really enjoyed the voice actor and the way that he's like, where does it hurt? Don't joke. You hurt something. You broke something. Your face? And the way he said it, I fell out so hard laughing. He's like, there are so many layers of shade in that comment, and I was cracking up. And then eventually he pretends to be a chef, and it's only when Luffy insults him and he like withers that Luffy realizes that's Foxy. Previously, he's like, oh, that woman must have been Foxy's sister. So those bits, because like Foxy says something like, as he's about to put these little masks on, he says something like Foxy face change. And I thought he was about to have like another transforming power, like Mr. 2. But it's just straight up masks and like costumes, which somehow is way funnier. Like, amazing. These giant masks, they're humongous. Like, they're the size of a dinner tray. And then we have this weird machine. He like traps Luffy in this room that has a mirror behind him. And he's using his slow ray on Luffy, and it reflects off the mirror and bounces so that it's really difficult for Luffy to dodge both that and the attacks that are coming from the actual like boxing gloves that are mounted to the front of this machine. There's a really funny joke where Luffy asks him how it moves, and he says that's a secret. And we see his feet like pumping away on these little bicycle pedals underneath. And Luffy says, you're sweating a lot. And he just says, you're imagining things. And I don't know why, but the idea that he doesn't want Luffy to know that he's just bicycle pedaling this feels very correct to me. Like, of course he wouldn't. He wants Luffy to think that this is this amazing mechanical, like, marvel that he has powered with something. Of course he would. But eventually, Luffy figures out that he can just break the mirror behind him so that the reflection doesn't work. And also the fact that the reflection does what it does is Luffy realizes the reason why the guy who has those like giant knife arms can be like in the middle of the ray and it doesn't affect him. He uses that reflective knife edge or side to sort of bounce the rays back so he doesn't get slowed down. which is, I have to assume, going to be the way that they beat Foxy, is that they're going to like redirect the ray and slow him down with his own ray. That's the only way, because otherwise, what are you going to do with this guy? And it makes sense that the way the other man with the knife arms, or whatever you want to call them, fins, it makes sense that they didn't want them to know that's how he was able to be unaffected, because like when Porch is asked, she says it's a secret to, I think she's talking to Sanji at the time. And of course you don't want people to know that, because then they're going to defend against it, which is what makes it so funny that Foxy is out here with an entire room full of mirrors for this attack. He is so certain that he's going to beat Luffy here that exposing the secret doesn't feel like a big deal, because he's assuming he's coming out on top and it won't matter anymore. But he is giving away like the number one way, I would assume, to take him down. I did want to ask you guys for some clarification. The end of the second game, the race, when they take Chopper, they discuss starting a new round of 3 games, and they begin this fight. Is this fight the last game of the previous trio, or the first game of the new trio? Because I've been assuming it's the first game of the new trio, that basically it was supposed to be 3 games and whoever wins 2 is the winner. And because the Foxy Pirates won the first 2, it's assumed, well, even if we won the third one, it doesn't matter. But then I realized if you won the third one, it does matter, because you could take back at least one of your teammates. So is this the third game of the second trio? And then we have a whole other trio of games that we're going to do after this one? That's sort of what I've been like thinking is happening, but I'm not totally sure. And honestly, it's really funny to me because you know, Gus was talking about how this is a filler thing, that they only the whole thing with like Chopper getting taken and got back. That's the only thing that's actually in the manga. And the rest of this is filler to make sure that they don't overtake the manga. And I really thought adding one additional trio of games was going to be all it took. But it looks like they're having a third trio to really extend this out. And I feel like I should be a little bit frustrated by that, but I'm enjoying the game aspect of this arc so much that I don't care. I'm really honestly like glad in a way, because I think the game thing is funny as hell. Like, what a weird, and the ways that they cheat and the weird characterization of these pirates, and all of this is just such a nice change from the usual show up at an island, locals are oppressed by some maniac warlord that we now have to be whatever. And a part of me is going to be sad when this is over, because the tidiness of it all being involved with just the pirates and not affecting anybody else is very appealing to me. So I just want to mention next episode, I believe, because this trio ends with 219. The next episode was 220, and then it jumped to like 226 or something. I think that I shared the spreadsheet that Florian made for me, but in the Discord channel, I'm not sure. But there's apparently like a filler arc in the middle of the coming trio of episodes. So anybody who's following along, you may want to check in the Discord and see, because there's going to be just watching the next episode in like naturally 220, but then jumping over a few and watching 2 more. So I want to give folks warning about that in case. Also, I haven't watched the filler arc that you guys have said was really good because shit has been a bit bananas, and I keep saying I'm going to do it, and I really want to do it. I'm not putting it off because I'm not interested. I actually am very interested, but it just hasn't worked out for me the past couple of weekends. So I think this weekend I'm going to really try and do that. And I'm looking forward to it because I am kind of wanting to watch it and then let it transition into this arc so that Owen can watch some of the Foxy Pirate stuff, because I think he's going to get a real kick out of a lot of it. So let's see. Gus says there's only 2 trios of games. The last game of the first trio was filler, and the first 2 games of this trio were filler. So the fight that Luffy's in with Foxy right now is filler? Because I thought that they agreed to like one more round. And that was the thing that they made the deal where 500 of your descendants will always be Foxy Pirates. I might be just like misunderstanding the setup here. Did they only agree to one more game, period? Because Gus is saying no. I'm like running out of time, so I'm going to have to wrap this up. But Gus, if you want to like give me more of a breakdown in the Discord channel and help me, that would be appreciated. He says they agreed to one more round 2 games ago. They agreed to 500 people for the last game. Oh. I thought that... All right, I'm confused. I'm just going to say it. Clearly, I've got the count messed up somewhere. So I'll just deal with that. But I believe you. All right. Forgive me, everybody, for going off a lot, but also I don't ask forgiveness. I take it back. Thank you again, Florian, for commissioning this. Appreciate you all. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.